My name's Claire, I'm 29, and I travel a lot for work. I'm a salesperson, mostly covering the Pacific Northwest, so I've stayed in everything from bland chain hotels to tiny Airbnbs tucked into quiet neighborhoods. I don't spook easily. When you're constantly on the road, you learn to sleep through thin walls, strange noises, and neighbors slamming doors at all hours. But what happened in Portland in May of 2022 has never left me. I'd booked a craftsman-style house a little outside downtown. It wasn't a whole house rental, more like a big old home the owner had split into guest rooms. The photos looked nice. Clean hardwood, bright kitchen, a little porch with hanging plants. The listing mentioned that one of the bedrooms in the house was locked for storage and not part of the rental. That's pretty normal. I've seen it before. I got there on a rainy Tuesday. The host had left a laminated check-in sheet on the kitchen counter with the Wi-Fi password, trash rules, and the reminder, "Do not attempt to open the storage room." That door was right at the end of the upstairs hall, just past my bedroom. It had a cheap brass knob and a little sticker label that actually said storage. I remember thinking it looked like the kind of door you'd see in an office supply closet. Nothing about it stood out. Looking back, the first night felt like a false sense that everything was fine. I unpacked, microwaved some leftover Thai food I'd grabbed, and laid out my work clothes for an early meeting. Portland rain hit the eaves in the background, and by midnight, I was half asleep scrolling on my phone. Around 12:40, I heard something. At first, it was so faint I thought I'd imagined it. A kind of shuffle, like the slow drag of a foot. Then, clear as anything, the small cough of someone clearing their throat. It came from the storage room. I sat up and tried to listen better. Silence. My first thought was that it was probably just the pipes, or the house settling. I'd heard weirder stuff in older rentals, so I let it go and went back to sleep. The second night, it happened again. This time I was wide awake, finishing a work report on my laptop when the sound started. Like someone moving just on the other side of that door. Then the scrape of fabric against wood. I turned off my screen and sat in the dark, straining to listen. A shadow passed under the doorframe. My heart kicked a little, but I told myself it could have been headlights outside, shifting through the curtains. Still, I picked up my phone and texted the host, "Hey, just wanted to confirm, nobody else is booked in this house, right?" It was 1:07 a.m. To my surprise, the host replied almost instantly, "Nope, you're the only guest. All good. All good, right?" I finally worked up the nerve to step into the hallway on the excuse of using the bathroom. As I walked past the storage door, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. 2 different sets of shoe scuffs on the baseboard. One set narrow, like sneakers, and another wider, heavier. In the bathroom, I stood staring at myself in the mirror, listening. That's when I heard a long inhale and exhale, muffled but definitely human, right through that thin wall. Then a low metallic tink, like a chain touching wood. I didn't sleep much after that. On the third night, it all came to a head. I was lying in bed, phone face down, recording audio, just to prove to myself later that I wasn't imagining things. Around 2 a.m., the house went quiet in that way where silence almost has a weight. And then came the sound, a latch settling. The subtle roll of a doorknob. I pulled the blanket to my chin and kept perfectly still. From my doorway, I saw light shift in the hall. And then, someone stepped out of the storage room. He wasn't rushing or sneaky. He moved the way people do when they're half asleep, walking softly, shoulders relaxed. But when he reached the middle of the hall, he paused. He turned his head toward my room and just stood there. There was a small nightlight in the outlet by the bathroom, enough to outline his figure. I couldn't see his face, only the silhouette of a man with his chin tucked down, like he was listening. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I fumbled for my phone with my fingertips, moving as little as possible, trying to hit call. After what felt like forever, he turned back down the hall. I heard the muted rub of a door against carpet. The storage door. It slowly shut, then silence again. I didn't sleep another second. By dawn, I'd already packed. I sat in my car in the driveway, hands shaking so badly I had to wait a few minutes before pulling out. When I finally worked up the nerve, I called the host. He sounded groggy, annoyed, like I'd woken him up. When I told him someone had come out of the locked room, he paused for a long beat, then said, "Oh, that must have been the maintenance guy. He probably just stopped by late." I snapped. I told him that wasn't acceptable, that I should have been told if anyone else had access. He got defensive, said the house was old, the locks tricky, that I was overreacting. I didn't argue. I hung up and drove straight to a hotel. Later, I called the non-emergency police line. They sent someone for a welfare check. The officer called me afterward, said there was no forced entry, nothing obvious, but then he added something that still makes my skin crawl. He said there was a cot folded up in the storage room, a water bottle with condensation on the dresser, and a crumpled cough drop wrapper in the trash can. I hadn't imagined it. Someone was living in that room. I filed a complaint with Airbnb, sent them screenshots of my messages with the host, even gave them the audio recording where you can clearly hear a faint cough at 12:43 a.m. They gave me a partial refund and told me they'd look into it. That was the last I ever heard from them about it. It's been 2 years and I still can't book a rental without checking every single door, closet, and crawl space. I wedge a chair under the handle of the bedroom when there is no key. My friends joke that I'm paranoid, but I can't unsee the image of that man standing in my doorway in the dark. I book short-term rentals the way most people grab coffee, without much ceremony. I'm an IT consultant, and I need Wi-Fi, a desk that isn't an ironing board, and some quiet. Hotels work for quick trips, but if I'm staying a week or more, I look for kitchens and laundry. This condo in Miami checked all the boxes. High-rise overlooking the bay, balcony view, secure building, 24-hour doorman. It was January 2021, and after 3 grueling months with a fintech client, I wanted a place I could just relax with my girlfriend. I'd booked that condo for what was supposed to be my first trip with her. We'd been dating for a while, and this was our first getaway together. For us, it was a big step, and I thought it was perfect. At about 11, the lights flickered. Nothing unusual, just a quick blackout. My eyes went to the router, then, for some reason, to the smoke detector above the bed. Cheap white plastic, standard issue. But even while the lights went dark, its red LED held steady. Smoke detectors on battery don't do that, they blink. Something about it stuck. Later, I flipped the master breaker and killed all power. Fridge stopped, router lights died, but the red LED glowed on. That was wrong. I grabbed a chair, stood beneath it, and took photos. The plastic was newer than the other detectors, off-center like it had been removed and replaced. Through the vent slots, I spotted a small drilled pinhole. Not a manufacturing hole, a drilled one. Next to it, a Torx screw instead of a Phillips. Without thinking too much, I tore a strip of tape from my gear bag and covered the hole. My phone buzzed with the host's fast reply to my message about a malfunction. "Thanks for letting me know. I can send maintenance tonight." It was nearly midnight. "Who offers maintenance at midnight?" I typed back. No need. I'll check in the morning. I scanned Wi-Fi on my phone. Dozens of SSIDs popped up. One stood out. Cam bedroom, Miami. Open, unsecured. The practical side of me had already decided. I climbed the chair again, twisted the puck, and it came away easily. Inside wasn't a smoke detector. It was a board with a micro SD slot, a Wi-Fi module, and a coin battery glued inside. A consumer spy cam, hidden in plain sight. My stomach twisted with the thought of what it had seen. This was the first trip I'd ever taken with her. Of course, we'd used the room, lived in it like any couple would. The idea that someone had been watching wasn't just creepy. It felt humiliating, like something had been stolen from both of us. I filmed everything, and a quick lookup confirmed the vendor, a known spy cam manufacturer. I pulled the SD card and bagged it. At 12:40 a.m., I called non-emergency police. 2 officers arrived. I showed them the device, the glowing LED during a breaker kill, the SSID. One shrugged, the other wrote a report number on a card. "This isn't uncommon," he said. They left. We moved our things to the sofa, balanced a glass against the door as a makeshift alarm, and left the TV on mute. By dawn, I was drinking bitter coffee, staring at the taped puck. I filed a complaint with the platform, uploaded photos, the video, the police report. The host messaged again almost instantly. "Please confirm you didn't remove anything from the unit." That line, "anything from the unit," burned itself into me. We checked out, dropped the keys on the counter, and relocated to a bland beige hotel. Later, I slotted the SD card into my laptop. The folders were dated. Inside, dozens of clips. Older files showed other guests. It had been recording for weeks. The platform refunded our unused nights, suspended the listing, and told me it was under investigation. The host claimed it was a noise monitor. I sent the MAC lookup and photos of the drilled hole. No reply after that. Since then, I've built a routine. Flip breakers, look for lights that don't die, scan Wi-Fi for odd SSIDs, inspect detectors, thermostats, outlets, travel with an RF scanner, keep tape handy. I don't know if it was the host or a guest who installed it. Doesn't matter. Access is access. Months later, in another city, I caught myself staring at a yellow detector in a hotel room ceiling, waiting for it to blink. It didn't. Still, I taped it the first night. People laugh when I tell them this. I laugh too, sometimes. But the truth is, I haven't slept the same since Miami. Not when every little red light might be an eye. The only good thing I can say is that when I finally had the SD card in my hand, I deleted everything. Every clip, every file. At least I knew no one else would see it. But that didn't erase the fact that someone already had. I'm fortunate to be a tech guy who knew where and how to look for anything that looked weird. But I wonder how many other people who aren't into tech and are going through this kind of humiliation and exposure without knowing it. That's what scares me the most. I booked that Asheville bungalow because the photos looked like a fall postcard. Porch swing under a maple, string lights over the eaves, a chalkboard by the door with little leaves sketched in chalk. My husband, Mark, and I both teach. Me 5th grade, him high school history, and October is the only month that feels like ours. We packed light. 1 nice outfit each, 2 rain jackets, and a promise to spend most of the weekend outdoors. The house sat on a slope above a quiet street. The porch smelled of wet wood and cinnamon, with cider packets and a handwritten welcome sign by the key box. Inside, small living room, 2 quilted bedrooms, galley kitchen with open shelving and a binder thick with rules. I flipped to the emergency page first, like I always do, then checked the locks. Mark teased me for it. At 7:18 p.m., the host texted, "I stop by evenings to make sure everything's fine. Just 5 minutes." We looked at each other. I replied, "We're good, thanks. Turning in early tomorrow." No reply. We ate takeout, watched half an episode of something, and I made a mental map of shoes, switches, and exits. At 9, while brushing our teeth, a knock came. 3 taps. I opened the chain latch door. A man in a puffer vest stood there with a clipboard. "Hey there, Luke, your host. Just making sure everything's fine." Before I could answer, he stepped in. He chatted about the rug, pointed out the thermostat, then lingered a beat too long at the hallway leading to the bedrooms. 5 minutes, give or take a minute too long, and he was gone. We laughed it off after locking up. At 12:43 a.m., I woke to a sound that didn't belong, the distinct creak of the front door hinge. My husband stirred too, just barely, but didn't wake. I lay still, ears straining. A minute later, the hallway floor let out the faintest groan, as if someone had tested their weight on the boards just outside our room. When I finally sat up, I saw a thin strip of light spilling under the bedroom door. The kitchen light was on. We hadn't left it that way. I didn't open the door. After a few seconds, the light clicked back off. By morning, I told myself it had to be the power flickering, maybe the fridge compressor causing a surge. Coffee, trail hikes, a stop at the local bookstore. They sanded down the edge of what I'd felt. Still, that evening, I texted Luke, "We're good here. No need to stop by tonight." And he replied, "No worries. Enjoy your stay." Here's a detail. At 2:08 a.m., I needed the bathroom. In the hallway, the light flickered before steadying. Then at 3:11 a.m., I woke up to another sound that didn't belong. This time, the rattle of the front door handle, as if someone was moving it from outside. A pause. Then the sound of keys, the subtle scrape of one slipping against a lock. The kitchen light snapped on again. Footsteps padded across the floor. I got out of bed, cracked the door, and saw Luke at the sink. Keys on the counter. "Hey," he said. "Light was flickering. Didn't want it to bug you." "It's not okay to come in at 3 in the morning," I said, keeping my voice firm. "Routine maintenance. Owner discretion. It's in the binder," he gestured. Mark joined me. "You need to leave. Now." I put the rental platform on speaker. The support agent's voice was clear. "Host entered unannounced? That's a violation." Luke stiffened, mumbled about customer safety, and left. We relocked everything and sat awake until dawn. In daylight, we packed in silence and called the police. 2 officers came, photographed the binder clause, owner access at discretion, and told us they couldn't do much beyond a report. Luke stayed on the porch while the officers took notes, like he didn't know whether to go or explain himself. "Helping guests," he said, but no one had questioned him. The platform moved us to another house across town and refunded our stay. The new host texted a code and apologized for not meeting us in person. I wanted to thank him for staying away. Back home, I told the story to colleagues. Everyone had a version. Landlords with master keys, maintenance showing up unannounced. Sharing didn't make it better, just proved how common it was. People think being a digital nomad is all beach views and freedom. But most of the time it's just emails, deadlines, and whatever Airbnb has decent Wi-Fi. By July of 2021, I'd stayed in so many Airbnbs that I had a routine drilled into muscle memory. Check locks, walk the perimeter, note exits. Little rituals to settle myself into a place that was never fully mine. That month, I booked a small basement studio in Seattle. It was described as minimalist, perfect for solo travelers. The listing photos looked harmless enough. When I walked in, I immediately noticed a strange little feature. A painted door, no higher than my thigh, tucked behind the couch against the far wall. The host hadn't mentioned it. At first look, it seemed decorative, maybe an old storage panel or some odd architectural leftover. I'm the type who notices details though, and something about it made me pause. The slats looked newer than the rest of the trim, like it had been repainted more recently. Still, I brushed it off. I set my bags down, checked the front lock twice, and even tested the egress window. Old habits. That night, I unpacked, made myself tea, and sat cross-legged on the couch with my laptop in front of me. The crawlspace door sat just behind my shoulder, out of sight unless I turned. The first night passed quietly. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the AC cycling, neighbors thudding above. But the next evening, I noticed something small that snagged in my mind. When I'd first arrived, the crawlspace door had been perfectly flush with the wall. That night, when I walked in after grabbing dinner, it stood ever so slightly ajar, barely a finger's width. I crouched, pushed it closed, and felt the latch catch. Maybe the cleaning crew had left it loose. Maybe air pressure shifted it. Still, I didn't like the sight of it open. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up to a noise I couldn't place. It wasn't loud, just like wood dragging against concrete. I held my breath, waiting. The AC clicked off. Silence. That scrape again. Then, I looked toward the couch. That little crawlspace door sat directly behind it. I told myself houses make noises, ducts expand and shift, but the scrape didn't seem like random. Morning brought something worse. Dirt tracked onto the rug from the crawlspace door outward. Not clumps like you'd knock off shoes. It looked more like sock grit, ground in dust. I checked the entryway mat. Nothing there. Checked the egress window. Locked from inside. My whole core tensed. I messaged the host in the app, "Hey, notice the crawlspace door doesn't stay shut. Could you confirm it's sealed? Thanks." 2 hours later, a reply, "Crawlspace is sealed. Don't worry, old houses breathe sometimes." Smile emoji. That smiley face irritated me. Houses don't breathe footprints onto rugs. By the third night, I wasn't sleeping well. I stacked my luggage against the crawlspace door before bed, more to calm myself than anything. Then I wedged my tripod between the handle and the couch leg and balanced a glass bottle on top. If the door moved, I'd know. At 2:51 a.m., the bottle clinked, not shattered, just a tiny noise, like glass nudged and resettled. I shot upright, phone in hand, recording. The tripod leaned slightly. The door handle had rotated maybe 10 degrees, then back. I replayed the video frame by frame. No slam, no air vent gusting it open. Deliberate movement. That was enough. I packed while the sky was still dark, checked into a hotel downtown, told the host I had a family emergency. He offered me a refund if I came back. I didn't answer. Later that day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Maintenance here. We'll reseal crawlspace." I hadn't given my number to anyone but the host. He'd forwarded it. That made my skin crawl even more. I never went back to collect the charging brick I left plugged in by the couch. Didn't even ask. Some things aren't worth walking into again. Now, whenever I rent, I have a checklist. I push furniture against any small door and carry a doorstop alarm in my backpack. Sometimes, when I nap in a daylight basement or ground-level rental, I'll dream I hear that scrape again. Wood shifting against concrete. I wake up instantly. heart racing, sure a handle somewhere has just turned. And even with the memory fading, I can still picture the dirt tracked across the rug. Not clumps, just faint, like someone walking slowly, carefully, while I slept. In September 2019, I booked a small guest house in Charleston. I'd been covering a piece on coastal redevelopment and needed somewhere quiet to crash while I sifted through hours of interviews and notes. The listing had that curated rustic meets modern vibe. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs in the lamps, things like that. But the bedroom had one feature that stood out. A massive antique standing mirror positioned directly opposite the bed. Gold leaf frame, warped glass. You know those mirrors that look like they've seen generations come and go? It didn't seem important, just another passing detail. I was bone tired from the drive, and mirrors in rentals aren't exactly rare. Still, I caught myself waving once before turning in, just messing around, and something looked off. My reflection seemed a half beat slow, like it lagged for a fraction of a second. I laughed it off as exhaustion, closed the blackout curtains, and passed out. The next day was normal. Morning coffee, laptop open, hours of typing. By evening, I decided to clean up a bit. The mirror had fingerprints on it. Not mine, not from the past 24 hours anyway. I grabbed a towel, sprayed some glass cleaner, and started wiping. Most of the streaks came right off, but one crescent-shaped smudge near the lower right corner wouldn't budge. I leaned closer. It wasn't on the surface. It was on the backside of the glass. Weird, I thought. Maybe the silvering had degraded. Antique mirrors sometimes do that. But the smudge looked fresh, like an oily print pressed against it. I stepped back and circled the mirror. It was heavier than it looked, standing on a thick wooden base, angled slightly toward the bed. Something about it bothered me. The mirror wasn't flush with the wall. There was just enough space to suggest it could be moved. I couldn't help myself. Something kept pulling me back toward it. I slid the mirror a few inches aside. Dust rolled up from the floorboards, but something else caught my eye. A perfect round hole in the drywall, about the size of a nickel, and taped loosely over it was a scrap of black fabric, just enough to cover, but not enough to block light. Behind the hole was darkness. Deep, hollow darkness. At first, I tried to convince myself it was some kind of old wiring access point. Maybe the guest house had been renovated and someone left it behind. But then I leaned closer with my phone flashlight. The beam slipped through the hole and caught what looked like shelving and unfinished drywall, a closet in the adjacent unit. And then it hit me. The mirror wasn't just decoration. It had been placed there on purpose. The hole lined up exactly with the bed. I stepped back fast, heartbeat pounding so loud it filled the silence. My rational side kept piping up. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe the host doesn't even know. Maybe it's from a previous owner. But the journalist in me, part that notices details, knew better. That black fabric flap wasn't old. The tape was new. Someone had been using this peephole. I spent the next hour pacing, debating. Do I confront the host? Do I just leave? Do I call the police? I compromised by documenting everything. I filmed the mirror, peeled back the fabric, recorded the hole, the angle. I even slid the mirror farther just to show how perfectly it framed the bed. Then, I pushed the mirror back, packed my essentials, and locked the bedroom door with the flimsy button lock. I lay on top of the covers, shoes still on, backpack at my feet. And I kept waiting for footsteps from the other side of the wall. At 3 a.m., I gave up. I grabbed my bag, tossed my charger and toiletries into it, and drove to a chain hotel near the highway. The next morning, I reported everything to the platform. They promised to look into it. I also called the host's emergency number, got voicemail, and left a short, blunt message. There's a peephole behind your mirror. Someone set it up deliberately. You need to explain this. The host never called me back. Later, when I reviewed my footage, I noticed something I hadn't caught in the moment. Faint light flickering in the hole as I adjusted the mirror. It wasn't my phone beam. It looked more like light coming from the other side. Like someone had turned on a flashlight, just for a second, while I was filming. That detail still keeps me up. If you also thought the worst part wasn't the noise in the locked room, but knowing you weren't the only one with a key, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and let me know in the comments how fast you'd have checked out. And if you think the open road is freedom, you haven't heard the stories I'm about to share. Click now to watch 4 disturbing road trip horror stories. Because on some highways, the scariest part isn't getting lost, it's being found. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.